Hey guys, welcome to Automotive Technology. This is Community Independent School District's Auto Tech program. And of course, I'm Mr. Gabriel, Professor Gabriel, and I'm what they call an embedded faculty. So I actually work for Trinity Valley Community College, and I'm embedded in Community Independent School District as the automotive instructor. And so I'm using this video, right now I'm videotaping in my shop, only because they don't have our facility completed yet there at the new high school. Otherwise, I'd film from there and be able to take you around and show you the shop. But they're not done with it yet, and of course, with all this COVID going on, a lot of times the campuses are shut down during this. So I needed to use this video, though, as an opportunity to introduce myself for you guys that haven't had me. I know a lot of you watching this, you've had me this last year because, of course, I've taught for community already 1 year. This will be the second year I teach for them. But I wanted to introduce myself first and tell you a little bit about me, so that way you understand who I am and what I've got to offer and bring to the table. So I'm 56 years old, and I've never done anything my whole life other than be around cars and working on cars. I've made a living working on cars for a lot of years. My grandfather, when I was much younger, like 11, 12, 13 years old, he owned service stations, and so I spent my summers with my grandparents because I loved being with my grandfather and going to the gas station with him. And so I pumped gas, I fixed tires, I balanced tires, I put belts and hoses on cars. I mean, I knew a lot more about cars than even adult men did at that particular time. My dad was a machinist for the railroad, and my dad was always involved in cars, and so, I lived it 24/7. So when I got to be about 15, 16 years old, got my license, I went out and bought me a Mustang and turned it into a drag car. And of course, you learn a lot along the way, things that you think you know and you figure out you don't know, but eventually you do get it figured out. The more you do it, the better you get. And so I built my own engines, I built my own transmissions, I put my own rear end gears in, and you figure out real quick where your weak links are at. I mean, I've twisted up drive shafts, I broke U-joints, and I've tore up a lot of stuff, but that's all learning. I mean, that's part of the learning curve. And you guys, the more you work on cars, the more you're going to tear stuff up, whether it was your mistake or not. But that's what makes you better and better. You start learning. And so anyway, when I got out of high school, I went to work in the dealerships. I've spent most of my time working for Ford and Lincoln Mercury. Spent about 26 years with Ford Motor Company. And then I went on and jumped ship, and Lexus was launching their line in the U.S., and they started their launch with the LS400. And so I saw that it was a good upstart of a company in the U.S., and I jumped ship and I went to work for Lexus. And so I spent about 5 or 6 years with them. I worked for the Park Place franchise, and Mr. Ken Snitzer was the owner, and he was a great owner to work for. He spared no expense on having the best of everything, the best of equipment, the best of people. I worked in a whole shop full of guys just like me that loved cars and were very, very good at what they do. And so you guys will find out that in your careers, and I know that a lot of you may not ever make a career out of this, but this is true in anything you do in life. If you surround yourself with good people, people that are good at what they do, it'll rub off on you and you'll learn from them. And I've been fortunate enough that I've worked with a lot of really sharp minds over the years, and I've learned a lot from people. You'll learn a lot on your own, you'll learn a lot from others, and you'll learn to share your information. But anyway, so I worked for Lexus for another 6 years. I left them, and I've always been tinkering with cars on the side, at home. Of course, I built my own race cars, I built my own show cars, and I was always working on other people's cars at my house. And it just got to where, honestly, I was making way more money in the evenings and on the weekends than I was at my day job. So we ended up I ended up quitting, and we just opened up our own restoration shop, and we did car restorations in Wiley, Texas, not far from Dennis Collins' Jeep place. And so I did that for about 6 years or so, And, you know, honestly, we made really good money. I mean, me and my wife made extremely good money. But the problem is, when you're that busy, you never have time to take off. I mean, I've found that I was sometimes working 7 days a week. I was working till midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. There were some nights that we didn't leave the shop until 3, 4 a.m. the next morning because there was just so much work to do. You know, it's really hard to find people that know older cars, and so your reputation will get spread around. The next thing you know, you'll have a lot of people knocking down your door wanting you to work on their cars. And it seems like when you work on these old cars like this 69 Chevelle or even my little 31 Model A back here, jobs will snowball. They'll come in for one thing, and next thing you know, you got the whole car blown apart and you're doing a lot more things. You know, this Chevelle right here kind of started out that way. We were just going to do a simple wiring harness. Well, all of a sudden that turned into rebuilding the quarter windows and redoing the brake system and doing the fuel system. And of course, we're fixing all the trim stuff and making it nice. And of course, it needs exhaust. And you know, we're going to add electric fans. And next thing you know, it turns into be a big job. And this car back here in the back here in the very back behind my Model A, that 57 Thunderbird, believe it or not, I've had that car for 2 years. And so that guy spent a lot of money with me. That car had been sitting in storage since 1971. It never seen daylight until just about 3 years ago. We pulled it out of storage, and of course, it being stored that long, all the rubber was deteriorated. I mean, there wasn't much left of anything that was rubber on it. So the guy didn't want to do any cosmetics. He just wanted a good, nice, safe, reliable car to drive. And so that meant pulling the engine out. Of course, the engine was seized up. We rebuilt the engine, rebuilt transmission, went through the differential, complete all new brake system, all new fuel system. Of course, we had to go through the electrical systems. Rodents get in there and chew up the wires and stuff. And so, like I said, that's just been a long project. But anyway, going back to it, then what happened was I just got to where I was just kind of tired of working so much, and I went to work for a community independent school district, and I was your main mechanic down there. So I fixed everything from buses to fleet vehicles to forklifts to golf carts, you name it. And I really loved that job because it was such a diverse job. I mean, I get bored doing the same thing all the time. That was a nice thing about that job is one day I might be working on a forklift, the next day I'm working on a bus, and the next day I'm working on one of the Suburbans. I even fixed you guys' scoreboard for the basketball team because they kept ripping the wires out of the scoreboard or out of the, the thing that you put the scores up with, the little head unit. And so nobody else in the school knew how to solder the connections back in there, so I did that. But anyway, then they asked me if I was interested in teaching automotive class, and that's when I took the job teaching this last year. And of course, I liked it. I always liked. I mean, I taught classes for Ford. Teaching adults is way different than teaching kids, but I want you guys to understand this is a college class, and I run it like a college class too. I'm not in there to babysit you. If you want to learn, you're going to learn. If you don't want to learn, I don't have time for you. So I'm just a pretty serious person when it comes to that. My class is about automotive stuff, and it's about cars, and I don't want you coming in class talking about football, talking about soccer. That's not the time for that. You can talk about that after class. Anything you want to talk about cars, we'll talk about it. If you want to understand the difference in a turbocharger and a supercharger, if you want to understand how nitrous oxide makes an engine faster, we'll talk about that in class. Of course, I like to do fun things for the kids. I know this last year, right before Christmas break, of course, the Ford versus Ferrari movie came out, and I made it a point to purchase that. And so I had a surprise for the kids. We actually spent, 2 days before Christmas break, and we watched that movie and we talked about it. I mean, I pretty much let the movie play through so everybody can enjoy it, and then we kind of went back and critiqued the movie a little bit too, and we talked about some of what they did in the movie, how they made the car faster and what they were doing and what changes they made. What was a benefit from getting rid of a vacuum secondary carburetor and going to a mechanical secondary. So a lot of times I'll use them movies, even though they're entertainment. I use them as a learning, teaching tool to teach you a little bit about cars too, and raise a question. Of course, when you set up a car, you're not going to set up a drift car the same way you're going to set up a drag car. You're not going to set up a drag car the same way you set up a circle track car that's just made to go in the same direction all the time. So all of those things you're going to learn your first year. We're going to go from front bumper to back bumper. You're going to learn all of it. And then, like I said before, for you guys that are returning that's had me before, hopefully you'll remember a lot of what I taught you on the basics. We're going to put a lot more of that to work. You're going to be working on cars day in and day out as long as we're taking enough cars in the shop. And so I want you guys to see it through. I want you to understand how to write up a repair order, how to talk to the customers and be polite, how to get the information you need to do a proper diagnosis, how to do the diagnosis itself, how to do an estimate, how to write it up, because you guys would have never had experience doing that. And I want you, by the time you get through this program, we're hoping to make this about a 3-year program. And really, that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to have the first years being a basics class. The second year is going to be a lot more hands-on. By the time you get to the 3rd year of it, I'd really like it to be more of an internship where I get you guys set up working somewhere part-time, and basically your grade would be derived on how you perform at work. So anyway, that's kind of what the class I would hope that it is going to be like. Anyway, hopefully that's a good introduction for you. I don't want to ramble on about stuff, but I did want to introduce myself and introduce how the class works. And of course, I look forward to seeing you guys in class, and hopefully you guys will love cars as much as I do. So anyway, we'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.